When someone lands on your website, you have 5 seconds to convince them not to hit the X button. That's it, 5 seconds. And if your homepage doesn't answer 3 simple questions right away, they leave. Donald Miller calls this the grunt test because even a caveman should be able to grunt out what you do, how it helps, and what to do next. And in today's episode, I'm going to break down exactly how to pass that test and show you why fixing this is one of the things that can completely change how your website performs. So what we're going to be diving into is going to be the grunt test today. These are the 3 big questions that you need to ask yourself when you go to your website does this page on my website actually pass this grunt test? And I'm going to deep dive into all 3 of these questions, how you should be looking at your website in order to how to answer these, and what you need to do in order to change certain things on your website in order to pass this grunt test. And as I'm going through all of this, it's important to remember that we're looking at the grunt test because, again, you have 5 seconds for somebody to decide whether or not they're going to continue to keep scrolling. So all of these changes, they can't be buried at the bottom of each page, right? Because you have 5 seconds. To be honest with you, probably less than that. So because we have such little time, we want to make sure that we're, passing this grunt test as soon as possible. So really all of this should be done above the fold. So this is all before somebody lands on your website, before they scroll at all. Every single page that you have on your website should pass this grunt test. So let's dive into the first question here. Question number 1 is going to be, what do you do? And, this question probably seems silly, but I go to dozens of physical therapy websites every single day, and most of them do not have that they're physical therapy clinics, which is absolutely insane, right? Like you should think that should be the first thing that pops up. But I think when clinic owners are building out websites, they often overthink these things and they forget to put that they're a physical therapy clinic and they're too worried about the cheeky copy and everything that they have on there. So you need to make sure that you have that, make it very clear the key with all of this and why we call it a grunt test, right? And we're referring to cavemen, or sometimes this is called the 3rd grade reading test. Somebody should go to your website and it should be very clear as to what you do. And we also have to remember that most people don't know what physical therapy is. And if somebody's coming from an ad as well and they go to your website and it says that, it doesn't say that you're a physical therapy clinic, they might think that they're in the wrong spot. And that's where we see bounce rates being super, super high. And, we can just, fix that very easily though by just saying, who it is that you are and what it is that you do. Your headline must clearly say, what you offer and who it's for. So, welcome to, ABC Physical Therapy Fluff. That really tells me nothing. Really what we're trying to figure out is, what do you do, right? So examples that will pass this are going to be something like helping runners in Denver get out of pain and back on the trails, or one-on-one physical therapy for active adults in Austin, Texas. If you say this out loud and you nod okay, yep, I get it, then you're good. Examples that aren't going to pass this, right, are going to be, where your heading says get to the summit or reach your peak or, find your potential. Those are all in theory, that does make sense. If you know that you're on a physical therapy website or you know what physical therapy is and you don't need much time explaining those things or you don't need much more education, but that doesn't work for people that have no idea what physical therapy is, and they're just trying to figure out where they should be going. So we need to be answering what it is exactly that you do, and it needs to be very clear. It needs to be very concise. And a nice bonus for this as well is, when you go to your website and you have a header, there's usually a photo in the background here, and the image should reinforce what it is that you do. So you're showing maybe one of your staff PTs or yourself treating somebody in motion, or it's a picture of your team, or it's somebody that is going out there and they're skiing or they're running. It's showing the person's aspirational identity. This would want to relate back to, the demographic of people that you see. That's, also something that you can do here. And visually, I talked about this in the last podcast where, you can tell stories and you can answer questions through photos. Photos are one of the best things that you can do without having too much text on your website, and it can help tell that story. So if you're trying to answer that grunt test, that question number 1 of what it is that you do, and if you do that with a picture, A+. That's exactly, what you want to do. You also have to remember, adding this in is an easy win for SEO as well. This doesn't really have to do with the grunt test, but it's going to help get people to your website. And if you don't have physical therapy in your H1, your H2, like in your immediate headings, then you're already behind the 8 ball on your SEO. And if you're interested in a free SEO audit, feel free to let me know. You can head over to the link in the description in this podcast episode. We do free SEO audits for people. You can fill that out. We do like a clinic URL SEO audit. So going over your domain, seeing where you rank. And we also do local SEO audits as well. So you can head over to that, check out the description, and I can give you little tips just like this on how to improve your website. The second question that we're going to be looking at for the grunt test is going to be, how does it make my life better, or the potential patient that's on your website? How does your service make their life better? This next part should be in the text of your header, and it should hint at the transformation that they're going to have if they come in and work they work with you. So you're not selling physical therapy, right? Like we talk a lot about, like in copy, talking about features versus benefits. We don't want to talk about the features here. That is your physical therapy. We want to talk about the benefits. So you're really selling the confidence that they're going to gain if they come in and work with you, the independence that they're going to get, the strength, the lifestyle that they're going to get back to, whatever that aspirational identity is, and really speaking to the version of who they want to become. If we can do that within the header and answer that grunt test question of how does our service make their life better, that's going to be a really easy way, and it's going to draw their curiosity to continue scrolling and want to take that call to action. The way you would build this out is through what we call a one-liner. This is a really good thought process exercise to nail this. How does it make my life better? What a one-liner is a single statement you can use to help people realize why they need your product or service. So really it's exactly answering, the question number 2 here of the grunt test. So creating this one-liner, you can break it down into specific parts. The first part is going to be the problem. So if you can specifically state a problem or pain point that most of your clients faced, that's what you're going to want to do here. You're going to want to make sure that this first statement is a problem, and make sure it's a pain point people actually feel. You only want to pick one though. I see this a lot when I go to PT clinics websites where there's just they're talking about too many problems that they're solving. So they're helping people get out of back pain and back to running and playing 36 holes this weekend. That's where you're going to need a general physical therapy, and a golf specific landing page. So now you can pick just that one singular problem and, make sure that the right people are going to the right page. As rehab clinics, this is pretty easy for us to state what the problem is, because the pain that we solve is literally pain, right? So, we can really lean into that. And this is a really easy, step one of creating this one-liner. The second part of the one-liner is going to be your product, or the solution to part 1, which is their problem. You need to make sure that your solution is connected with that problem, which then rolls into part number 3, which is going to be the result. So again, this is the aspirational identity that they're looking for and how you help them get there. You want to keep this short, you want to keep this focused, and you don't want to over problem saying things like, hey, we get results fast or freer appointments than the traditional clinic or anything like that. Just lean into their aspirational identity, talk about them always. I did the last podcast I did was on copy on your website. And we want to talk about how, your whole website should be talking about the potential patient and not you, because you are just the guide in their story. They are the hero in this story. So really lean into that. And, as you're creating this one-liner, really think about that thought process there. This one-liner can turn into your elevator pitch. Our one-liner at Ripple was keep doing what you love no matter how hard you push it. So, that was on our homepage of our website. That was also the signature on all of the emails that we had. The business cards that we created, that was the one-liner that we had there. It was really powerful. And it was perfect because it spoke directly to our audience, and those that got it. Because the people that were looking for a different version of physical therapy were the people that were out there, and they were doing the things that they loved, and they were pushing it. And what they wanted to push it as hard as they possibly could, or however hard they wanted to. And even if they were in pain, they wanted to continue doing that. And we provided that service for them. So if you go in and you answer part 1, which is the problem, part 2, which is going to be your product, and then part 3, and you mix all of those together, you're going to be able to create this really beautiful one-liner, which is going to answer grunt test question number 2 of how does it make my life better? Really, really easy. And I want to, reiterate it and say it out loud. And do whatever you need to do, because the second question of the grunt test is, how you make someone's life better. And this is the most important one. But if we're talking about conversions here, right? So we drew somebody in with question number 2. But if we're talking about like actually getting people to take that next step and actually convert on our website, this is where the third question of the grunt test needs to be nailed. And that third question is, what is that next step? How do they move forward to use your product? So what you want to do here is you want to have a single, bold, and obvious call to action above the fold. Again, in one of my earlier YouTube videos, we talked about the Z test and how your above the fold and your header has to pass what's called the Z test on your website, which is where, whenever somebody lands on your website, everybody's eyes do a Z pattern. So they start in the top left corner, they go over to the top right corner, they go to the bottom left corner, and then they go over to the bottom right corner. So within that Z test, you need to have 2 spots where you have a call to action and a button that stands out against your website. And this button shouldn't be like just like another nav bar option that's on your website. So I see it a lot where, you have like on the navigation bar, so the different options where people can go on your website, they have the About Us and then physical therapy, and then the blog, and then contact us. And there's no button there that actually stands out. Whereas in the top right corner of your website, if you have a button there that is very clear on what the next step is, that button is going to get clicked more often than not. So that's the first place where you need to start of like, what is that next step? The other place where you want this is just below the heading and subheading of your header and above the fold. So you want these 2 call to actions to be right there, and you want these to be the same thing. You don't want to have one of the call to actions that say like learn more, and then the other one is saying something like book a free phone consult. You want these things to be congruent with each other, and you want them to really push people. And we want to create as little confusion as possible, right? So we want these call to actions to say the same thing and take them to the same place. So examples of these, right, are going to be like, book your $50 evaluation, or start your rehab plan, or book your free 15-minute phone consult, or schedule your appointment. And what you want to make sure is that whatever that button says is the next step, people are doing that. I think that's oftentimes where a lot of the friction I see is somebody will have that button that says like, book your free appointment, and then it'll take them to a place where people can't actually book that appointment. They have to fill out a form. So what we would want is, if you're saying book a free appointment, that next page should have a calendar link where somebody can actually book that appointment. So that's really, really important. And as you're going down the website, you're going to want to make sure that you have this call to action, the same call to action on an ongoing basis, but you really want to clearly say, what is the next step for somebody to move forward with your product? So again, let's recap those 3 grunt test questions. If somebody lands on one of your website pages, they need to know what it is that you do, how it makes their life better, and what step do they need to do in order to take that first step of working with you. And if you miss any of these 3, you're not just confusing people, then you're losing potential patients. Again, this is 2025. People are, even if they're meeting you at local marketing events, they are going and they're Googling you. And before they come in and waste an hour of their time, they're going to your website and they are seeing who you are, what type of brand you have, what type of digital footprint you have. And if you're not doing these things correctly, the odds of them showing up certainly go down, okay? And so if you're putting a ton of effort into local marketing, but your website isn't dialed in, your website's not passing this grunt test, then the odds of people converting and moving forward or taking your brand and your business seriously go way down. So this is why websites are so important. This is why passing the grunt test on every page of your website is so important. And again, if you want help fixing this, then head on over to the link in the description. You can grab the Revamp Your Website bundle. It includes there's a 40-point marketing audit checklist in there There's a Canva template that you can use that will help you wireframe all of this and help you pass the grunt test. There's also an option where you can sign up for a local in a website SEO audit. And we do lots of website work for many people that work inside of Patch and even outside of Patch. So if you're interested in learning more about this, head on over to my Instagram page. It's going to be @_Jeremy Dupont. Feel free to shoot me a DM if you want me to take a look at your website, give you some recommendations on what you need to be doing. I'm more than happy to. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully you can go to every single one of your pages and take your pages through the grunt test, see if you pass them, and make some pretty simple changes in order to get it to pass the grunt test. And you're going to start to see more and more website conversions happening. So thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the pod, and I'll talk to you guys soon.